In the beginning, God made heaven and earth, the realms. But the earth was dark, void, and formless. And then on day one, God said, "Let there be light." And on day one, He separated light from darkness. Now, this is a natural principle laid down. Genesis 1 is a book of first principles. In other words, we could just as well say the laws of math and science. So science cannot oppose God. God does not oppose science. God is science. God is math. He made everything and He knows how everything works. So when science and God opposes each other, I can with boldness now say that it's because there's ignorance on the interpretation side of things. So many Christians do not understand the spirit language, and then they make doctrines, and science discovers stuff, and then the Christians fight the science, and everybody is wrong. But the word is forever settled in the heavens. The answers are in the word. Now, the first principle here is that the minute light comes in, darkness goes. And this is why there was a creation in the first place. Day one, God separated light from darkness. And He called light day and darkness night. On day one, we have light day and we have a day one. And not one of them is 24 hours, because the sun and the moon and the stars that actually orchestrates time was only made on day 4. There was no time. Yet God calls it a day. So please remember, this is a spirit book. So a day is in the spirit, not a 24-hour period, but it's more like a time period. So the days in Genesis, we can actually do better if we say the period 1, period 2, period, because it is a period of time. And this is set in the beginning. Now, why day? Because day is the most important measurement of time. And the patterns of day is given: evening, morning, day. Now, these 6 days were 6 periods with patterns: evening, morning, day, evening, morning, day, evening, morning, day, and it goes unto rest. And these days, a day is the biggest measurement in time, because a day consists of 24 hours that is divided in 12 hours and 12 hours. This is very important, because we read numbers in the Bible like 144,000, and people go off on tracks, but everything is settled from Genesis. 12 and 12 is a day. Now, when Jesus in Revelation, He sealed 144,000 people from the 12 tribes. What happened there is He literally took 12 apostles out of the 12 tribes. And we read in Isaiah that a child is born, a son is given, and the government is on His shoulders. Now, when the government was on His shoulders was the cross, because it was, everything was in place. He had 12 tribes in the Old Testament, 12 apostles in the New Testament. The tribes are the gates, the pearls of the city, and the apostles were the foundation stones. Now 12 and 12 together makes 24 elders, but 12 times 12 means all God's people together. 1,000 means perfect. It means God's government is in place. Now here in Genesis 1, we have the day pattern, which is evening and day, and it's divided by the morning. So it's also 12 hours and 12 hours. But in an hour, there are 60 minutes, and then there is 60 seconds. And then from a day, which is the biggest measurement, we get weeks. So a week is 7 days, determined in Genesis 1. Your whole life, you live in a week of 7 days, and God's week has 7 days. God is trying to tell you. So everything is connected. Well, science is now discovering that everything is connected. It's in Genesis 1. You cannot get away from it. You are in time, a closed capsule. And everything on earth is connected. We want to leave all this to the guys that are mystical and weird and going on. But these things are so plain in the Bible if we can only understand them. So a day is a period of time. The next place where a day is really proclaimed boldly is in 2 Peter 3, where there are people, they are willingly ignorant there was a flood, and they are worried about the coming of the Lord. And then he says, I do not want you ignorant about this one thing, that one day with God is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as one day. Now please, if a day is not a day in the Spirit, a year is not a year in the Spirit. It is periods of time. The Spirit overlaps and it intersects, and it's not dead points. It is a spiritual book. We are busy with visions and the language of the Spirit. So one day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is not one day. One of the biggest deceptions in the Bible is the 1,000-year millennium reign of the Christ. People read 1,000 years as a millennium. Millennium means 1,000, but in the Bible, 1,000 doesn't mean millennium. And you cannot interpret 1,000 years with millennium. 1,000 means it's 10 times 10 times 10. A complete times a complete times a complete means perfection. So when he says Satan was bound 1,000 years, it literally means the time Satan couldn't rule with death, because death ruled from Adam to Moses. But the only time death could not rule was the 3.5 years from when Jesus said to Satan, get behind me, and he left him for a more opportune season. In Revelation 20 it says Satan is bound 1,000 years until a better season. It's that time. So if you do not understand the language of the Bible, you're going to get totally mixed up, and you are lost in the corridors of time. And you know what happens then? You take prophecies that is not for you at all, and you apply them, and you're always scared of the devil, you're always scared of the dragon, and you do not understand that light drives darkness out. When God called Israel, he took them through the desert. When they came to the promised land, they said, no, we are like grasshoppers. We can't take the land. And God said, for sure as I live, my glory shall fill the earth. But this generation will go. And he says, for every day you have to literally take in the land, you will have a year in the desert. So for 40 days, they had to spend 40 years in the desert till a whole generation was wiped out. 4 is the number of earth, 10 is complete. So 40 is the number for a generation, and its principles set down. There were 40 years in the desert. Jesus was 40 days, 40 nights in the wilderness. John the Baptist was in the wilderness, baptizing in the wilderness, because they made their promised land a wilderness. And you know what he ate? He ate grasshoppers with honey. Jesus is sweet as honey, and he ate that nonsense, and he said, repent, turn you to God. So we must understand the Bible lingo. Otherwise, we are lost in the corridors of time. So when Jesus came and they crucified their Christ, now they had another 40 years. And their carcasses had to lay in the desert. And the marriage supper of the Lamb, he's not us sitting around the table. He says, all the fowls of the air will eat their flesh. So there is such a wrong interpretation. But you know what? God says He overlooks the day of ignorance, and He goes on with His purposes, whether the people have it or not have it, because the time ticks and you cannot turn it back and do it over. So the people that played the parts in time didn't even understand their day. But we have already entered the greatest day. So someone asked me, I said, but when is the Lord coming? Who knows? Nobody will know, because a day is 1,000 years, but 1,000 years is a perfect time. And it can happen any time in that perfect time. Because in the Bible, it says that Jesus was 3 days in the grave. No, he wasn't. Because it wasn't 3 full days. In the Spirit, a half a day counts as a day. So if we've already stepped into the final perfect day, it can happen anytime. The minute there's a generation that's going to wake up to these truths, they're going to enter in and we're going to bring creation back. You know, but because of time, we need to know this is the greatest day ever on the face of the earth. Yeah, but you don't understand. Yes, I do understand. If we go back to Genesis and we look at the days of creation, there is also a pattern set out. The first day God said, let there be light, divided darkness and light. The second day, water and water. The third day, land and sea. So it's light, water, land. Then he created the sun, moon and stars, light. He filled the water, he filled the land, he made man in the land, and then it was rest. Let's look at the pattern. Light, water, land. Light, water, land, rest. And it was preparation and it was filling. The minute Adam fell, this pattern broke out. On the 4th day, God created time. And when Adam fell, time broke out as a capsule. And the pattern of time follows the pattern of the perfect day. Yet it's played out. And when the end is back in the beginning, then we're going to go on with the plan of God. It is actually so simple because everything in time is a big cycle purpose of God. And in the cycle purpose of God, there is generational, seasonal cycles. And in the generational season cycles is life cycles. But through history, there are men that while in their little life cycle, they made an impact on the purpose of God. They didn't get caught up in their little existence. They stepped up. We're not in the day of preparation. We're not in the day of filling anymore. We are busy stepping over. I can hear the sound of abundance of rain.